Dear NZXT, I have a bit of a bone to pick with you. Now, before I get started on all the different little issues that I'm going to get into, I'm going to start by saying I adore my system. I adore the build. I adore the H440 case that I used to build the system in. It's a nice case. Everything about it is working perfectly fine. The system is running fine. It is very quiet, and the power in it is pretty spectacular. But I do have a bit of an issue. And the issue is basically with NZXT's customer service. I'm not happy with it. I'm not happy with it at all. And this poor customer service, and well, really not even poor, it's completely lack of, is going to be why I ultimately will move my build out of the H440 and probably into a Phanteks Enthu Evolve ATX TG, standing for tempered glass, because that is a damn good looking case. And if I had done the research and had actually found that case beforehand, that would probably be the case that this build is in. Now, to understand the issues that I'm having and why I am so frustrated with NZXT, we have to go back. And if you've seen some of the build vlog episodes, and if you haven't, I'll put a card up pointing you to the start of the build vlog, because that's when I first realized I had issues. This whole thing probably wouldn't be happening if these issues had been avoided in the first place, but they haven't been, and consequently I am in this position. Now, the very first issue I ran into was when I was looking at the case in the first episode of the build vlog. I realized there was no power supply bracket attached to the case. After I was done recording the video, I took a look around and could not find it. It wasn't in the box. It wasn't in the accessory kit. It wasn't inside of the case anywhere. It wasn't there. They had sent me a case. Now, this is a refurbished case, so they obviously had to go through it and make sure everything was good to go. They sent me a refurbished case without a power supply bracket. Now, the first hint to me that something was amiss with their customer service was the fact that it took 10 days for somebody to respond to the initial request, at which point they requested an invoice showing that I had actually bought the case from them, which of course I had. I bought it online from them. After a few days, I received the power supply bracket, but encountered a new problem. The power supply bracket did not have the thumb screws needed to attach it to the case. I had the screws to screw the bracket to the power supply itself, but I did not have the screws for the case. This was going to be a problem as well, because how is this power supply going to stay in this build? They never responded to that. NZXT's Twitter account allegedly pulled my ticket and said they would send me the screws, but I never received them. So that's another knock against them. No power supply bracket, and then you send me a supply bracket without screws. The next thing that I realized was amiss was there was no owner's manual inside of the hardware kit. I had all the screws except for the power supply thumb screws, but I did not have an owner's manual. And this would become tricky in the fact that they have a fan splitter that they had on the back of this case. And there's a very specific way that I think NZXT wants you to set the fans up. And in the actual owner's manual that comes with the case, I believe it's laid out in there how to do it. I didn't have that though. So this was another problem that I was facing in the course of this build. I went online and found an owner's manual online and printed it out, but the fan splitter only is discussed very briefly, and all the owner's manual online does is tell you that, hey, this is a fan splitter. You can connect your fans here. Doesn't tell you how, doesn't tell you what to do, just that it's there. So that's a bit of a knock against them as well. So I opened up a new ticket. And this ticket was opened up on March 13th, 45 days ago. There has been no response to this. The ticket essentially was, how do I connect the fans when I have an NZXT X62 Kraken inside of an NZXT H440 with the fan splitter? This is the new edition, by the way. This is the new edition H440, so it's not the really crappy one. It's supposed to be a PWM kind of sort of splitter. Doesn't really do that, and I'll get to that in a minute. I opened it up, though, and asked them, hey, I have the Kraken, I have the H440. How am I supposed to connect everything with the case fans? Because the case fans are already connected to the splitter. So I asked, how am I supposed to do this? That's all I asked. In fact, I got a response like about 24 hours later saying they were receiving a higher than normal number of tickets, and it would be a while before somebody could get to me on this. Now, I'm thinking be a while means maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because, you know, the first time around it took them 10 days to respond to me. So they're not exactly stellar in my book as it is. No, it has been 45 days, no response. Now, I've solved this on my own. I don't need them to answer this ticket now. But it irks me a little bit that 45 days has gone by and someone who has bought 2 products has spent over $200 on their site, probably $250 on their site at this point, has not received a response. Now, again, I love the H440 case. It's a nice case. Refurbished or not, it's nice. Once you figure out the quirks to it, it's good. And the X62 Kraken works like a charm. My system idles at 35 to 38 degrees Celsius most of the time, and load doesn't get above 70, but there's another reason for that. Again, in a minute. But 45 days to someone who spent $250 on their site. No response. To me, that means you don't value my business. It means you don't value future business. I wanted at one point to get the Hue Plus, which means I would need to get their USB 2.0 extension kit that they sell. And I even thought about buying their Grid version 2 for my fans. I thought about all this stuff. I'm not buying any of it. And if they come out with some new spectacular case down the road and I want to move my build into a new case, I'm not going to go with NZXT. I can't do business with a company that after 45 days can't answer a simple question about the fans. Now, let me tell you how I solved the fan issue. I removed the stock case fans. That was step 1. Step 2 was I went and bought new fans. Please hold. For the exhaust fan, I took out the stock NZXT exhaust fan and put in a Corsair AF140 red LED fan. Marginal improvement, maybe. The red is nice. It really has made me feel really good about the red and blue color scheme that I have inside of the case with my graphics card, motherboard, the NZXT Kraken, and now the Corsair as well. So everything in there is pretty much red and blue except for the XMP light, which is green. Just whatever. So I put that into the back and I connected that to the chassis fan header on my motherboard. I also went and purchased 3 Noctua NF-P12 static pressure fans. These are 120 millimeter fans. I, as I said, bought 3 of them, and using a couple of splitters and an extension cable, connected them to the high amperage header on my motherboard, and that solved everything. There are no fans connected to the fan hub. The radiator fans are connected to the CPU fan header, so everything is accounted for. And all my fans are independently controlled. Well, I mean, in the group, the 3 front fans are controlled at the same speed. And then obviously the radiator fans go at the same speed, and the single fan, you know. So I solved it on my own. And I was able to reduce fan speeds for one by about 30%. I'm pretty sure it's about 30% reduction. My front intake fans are running at a little bit under 1,000 RPM, and the exhaust fan is about 600, 700 RPM. The radiator fans are running at idle, usually about 500 to 600 RPM. So I'm bringing in more air than I'm pushing out. So I've got the positive air pressure going inside of there, and it's quiet. And it's not even that loud when I'm gaming. The fans do not ramp up that loudly when I'm gaming because of the curves I have. I have them set to really get going at about 60 degrees Celsius, and that doesn't happen very often in this system. In fact, the highest I've seen this system get under load is right around 70 to 72 degrees. It doesn't get that bad. I'm well away from what would be a temperature where it would throttle. So I'm not concerned about my temperatures. My temperatures are great, and the noise is greatly reduced. So obviously the stock case fans were what made the computer sound like a jet engine when it was running at load. They weren't running 100% like I thought they were, but they were probably running at 70% or so, and they were much louder. So I solved the noise, I solved the control, and I solved the connections on my own. But that's not the point. The point continues to be that NZXT had a chance to convince me to stay with them for future products. They had a chance to throw me a bone and tell me how they want you to connect things with this case. Now, I know how they want you to do it. I've come across it. I searched on the internet. I came across what it's supposed to be. They want all the case fans going into the headers on the splitter, and then the CPU fan goes into a white header. I believe it's a white header. There's a 4-pin header on the splitter, and I think it's the white one. And then the actual connector coming from the splitter can be then connected using a fan extension that they include that you plug into the CPU fan header on your motherboard. That's how they want you to do it. Now, there is a drawback to that. It does work. I tried it. I actually did try that before I went and bought new fans. The downside to that is you cannot control the other fans. The other fans will run at whatever speed they're running at. I don't think it was 100%, but they were running pretty fast, and that was loud. The CPU fan, the radiator fans, you can still control because of the CAM software, but that was about it. So that wasn't a good solution for me, and since NZXT has never bothered to respond to me, I don't really know if that's the optimal solution. That's just what they recommend on their actual owner's manual. But again, I went around that because I wanted control, and I knew with the Noctuas, those are PWM fans. I have full control over those. I can set them for pretty much any speed I want. Now, the Corsair is not PWM, but I can control it via DC through voltage on the motherboard, and I use Fan Expert 4, I believe is what it's called, on ASUS's software to set the curves. Everything is great. I just wish that NZXT would have responded. So this is what's probably going to happen, not immediately because things are happening, things are changing, life is happening as always. I'm probably going to switch this build out of the H440. And I'm probably going to get the Fantex Enthoo Evolve ATX tempered glass case. And I'm probably going to move my build into that case, maybe even by the end of the summer. We'll see. We'll see how finances work for me. And I'm going to keep the H440 because I do want to do a Ryzen build at some point, but I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know how that's going to work out financially. There's a lot of variables that could happen. But the one thing I do know is that NZXT is not going to be getting any more business from me unless they throw a pretty sizable bone my way. And I don't think they're going to do that. I'm not a large channel. I'm not a large presence on the internet. I'm not somebody with a lot of influence. It's not like, you know, hundreds of potential customers are going to watch this and be like, oh my God, NZXT is not going to respond to my ticket online. I can't buy from them. I need to go with somebody else. That's not going to happen. And I get that. I get the way it works. It just stinks. Because again, I really like the case. I like the Kraken. But at some point, neither of those are going to be in use. I'm going to eventually do a custom water loop. And I'll keep the Kraken because it'll come in handy when I do a Ryzen build if I get to be able to do that. So I'll have my cooler in case for Ryzen. And Ryzen parts aren't all that expensive. And maybe if I get lucky, I can get a 1080 Ti and move the 1070 into Ryzen and all that stuff. It's just a bummer. It just is. And I'm not as angry as I probably could be, but I mean, I keep hearing that number in my head, 45. 45 days. It is April 27th now. Yeah. It's technically 40. It was 44 days when I was really getting myself worked up about it because it was about 20 minutes ago, but 45 days has gone by. I mean, come on. I mean, and you just post it now. And NZXT has been posting on social media all of these people's builds and how awesome they look. And people's builds do look great. They do. And I wish they spend as much time on customer service as they do on social media, because my goodness, I can't imagine how many other people are in this position where they've submitted a ticket and have not been hearing back. I get 45 days is just not okay. So I'm disappointed in you, NZXT. I really am. You got some slick marketing. You've got a slick website. Your products look really nice. But behind all that, it doesn't mean anything if you can't help people out when they need it. And while I, in the end, don't need it, it's enough to push me away. So thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with me through this. Maybe the next time I do something, it'll be a little bit more lighthearted. In the meantime, check out some of my other videos. I've been uploading some gaming stuff. Some stuff is happening. I'll talk about it some other time. Today's not the day. That's all. I'll see you guys next time.